Discernment.
What do I use? What do I say?
Discernment, that's what the big topic was.
Okay.
Vinny and Tenzin won't be here till after class. They're stuck in the city.
Good evening and welcome to the Tibet Center here in South Orange, New Jersey. 502 North Ridgewood Road.
Okay, the last people are getting seated now.
Okay, there are people coming in.
Thousands.
Who've just arrived. Make yourselves at home. There's plenty of room. You can.
Yes.
So we'll start with the prayer for the spreading of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West by Yongzin Rinpoche. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their near ones, who have engaged in their teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dhamma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may they spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. Now, the Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One entered the Samadhi which examines the Dharmas called profound illumination, and at the same time noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, "How should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge?" And Avalokiteshvara answered, "Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form, form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed. Tadyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvaha. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. Now we generate bodhicitta. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Oh, put it aside. Okay. So now let us recite one rosary of the Medicine Buddha mantra, which we dedicate to His Holiness, who is in the process of recovering from knee surgery. Tayata Om Bengetse Bengetse Maha Bengetse Raja Samudgate Svaha. Tayata Om Bengetse Bengetse Maha Bengetse Raja Samudgate Svaha. Bengetse Bengetse Maha Bengetse Raja Samudgate Svaha. Tayata Om Bengetse Bengetse Maha Bengetse Raja Tadyata Om Bingate Bingate Maha Bingate Raja Samukate Swaha. So, we resume our discussion on Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we are discussing the importance of cultivating a virtuous motivation as we go through life and acting upon it with discernment. It's the union of compassion and discernment, the motivation of compassion and the discernment that determines the correct steps to take in our efforts towards helping others. So we had arrived on page 80. So, to go back just a little bit from where we ended, inevitable uncertainty. So, when we are approaching life, the situations that we have to navigate in life, if we have cultivated compassion, and compassion is a wish to remove the suffering of all others. It's not the actual removal of that suffering. The compassion is it's an inner thing. It's something that we cultivate within ourselves, and it determines our motivation for whatever it is that we then do to in the way of actually helping others. So the cultivation of compassion is the cultivation of a motivation or a motivating attitude. However, that isn't enough. As we work towards benefiting others, we are doing so within a very complex situation. And determining how best to go about implementing that attitude of wishing to remove the suffering of others, wishing to help others, to determine the correct steps to take along the way is what is being discussed here. And His Holiness suggests that this complexity is way beyond our ability to navigate it with any real control over the steps we take. We to a certain extent, we must simply do our best, because to really know all the variables, to really understand all aspects of that complexity is beyond our ability. So he begins, of course, no matter how hard we may try, human discernment is always incomplete. Unless we are clairvoyant or omniscient, like a Buddha or a God, we will never see the entire picture and will never know all the causes that have given rise to any situation. Nor can we foresee all the consequences of our actions. There is always bound to be some element of uncertainty. So this is this acknowledgement that we are not in full control, that we are not going to be able to know the whole situation thoroughly, is something where we can actually assume a certain, or it can help us have an attitude of humility, to let go of that belief that we can actually know that we control the elements. So humility is important, and it is important to acknowledge this lack of total control, the fact that we aren't going to know everything, but it should not worry us. So we should not approach that lack of knowledge of all aspects of the complexity of the situation that we are wishing to benefit. We should not approach that with concern, with worry. We should, as I say, be humble, and if our motivation is virtuous, if our motivation is pure, we don't really need to worry that much. We will be guided if we apply the discernment that we are able to, and if we engage with a virtuous motivation, then to a certain extent we have to let things fall where they do. So we should not be worried by this ambiguous situation. Still less should it make us despair of the value of rational assessment. Instead, it should temper our actions with proper humility and caution. Sometimes admitting that we do not know an answer can be helpful in itself. If we do not know something, it's better to admit it openly than to feign certainty out of misplaced pride or vanity. So I think that's where we ended yesterday.
It's a place to repeat.
Yeah. Yes. So here, of course, we're talking about navigating life in a normal worldly situation, and from a normal worldly point of view. But all right, His Holiness in this book is guiding us through how to take steps along an ethical path that is free of religious dogma, the weight of traditions, but that is has a certain purity about it, in that it is simply our wish to be of benefit to others and our wish to approach the situation with as much wisdom, as much discernment of how to go about it as we can bring to it. It's not that we are doing it according to dictates. We're doing it according to our wish to harm as little as possible and help as much as possible.
It's not culture bound at all.
Well, our discernment should incorporate a sensitivity towards cultures. No?
Yeah, no, by that I meant it's not bound by tradition, dogmatic tradition, as you were saying, yeah. And it applies to anyone in the modern world. It's modern, it's not.
And it should apply to even contradicting traditions or religions. It should work.
It does, if you think about it. You have to think about it, because it's written very cleanly and you could slip over the meaning when you read fast. Like everything he says.
So this uncertainty is another, the ambiguity, the uncertainty, our inability to know all the elements unless we are Buddhas or God. This uncertainty is another reason why ethics must be grounded at the level of motivation, as I've said, rather than purely on consideration of consequences. So here, I mean, His Holiness had earlier mentioned that an ethical system cannot be simply based on the effect that it'll have on others. We will only arrive at a fine, beneficial effect on others if we put the concentration on our motivation. As I've said, okay. The fact is, the consequences of our actions are often not within our control. Where we do have control is at the level of motivation and in deploying our critical faculties, our discernment. Okay, so in this vast arena of people, would anyone like to discuss this? You.
Ninth row, that one, yes.
You want to give him the microphone?
Bring him a mic, yes.
I guess one thing this goes back to the traditional Buddhist. There's a traditional Buddhist concept corresponding to this, right? Like, what do they call it? They describe it as the two wings of the bird, right? The wisdom and compassion. I mean, I remember thinking when we covered that in the Lamrim that, I mean, they're not truly separate things, right? Because if you really have like actual authentic compassion, you are going to naturally want to know what you can do that is actually going to help and not, like the desire the desire to figure out what is actually going to help instead of simply like jumping into it and doing things that may seem like they're helping but in the end harm, which happens very often. Seems like it's a natural part of compassion, right?
It seems like the wisdom is a natural part of compassion.
The understanding that wisdom is important, like the desire to attain it, I suppose, has to be a natural part of authentic compassion, right? Because otherwise, I think, I mean, you know that you don't truly know, so the desire to acquire more information should come naturally from authentic compassion. So I don't think they are truly separate things.
Obtain more information.
Yeah.
Nicely said.
So the two wings are two
Of one bird.
One
Sure,
bird.
yeah, in
Only
that
one bird.
analogy, yes, that is true. Yes, in the analogy, they are two parts of one thing, yeah.
So we often, when we talk about those two wings, to take it to that, we do work at developing. When you speak, I'll turn it this way, okay? This whole section of the audience.
There's a signing section too, don't forget them.
But we have to, the mics, they're being passed around. Okay, so the two wings. Compassion, and I read the Lamrim section a few weeks ago. Compassion is within myself working at cultivating a wish to remove the suffering of others. That's working against my sort of natural self-centeredness, my natural concern merely with my own suffering.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify, compassion is the wish to remove the suffering of others, right?
Yeah.
When I cultivate it, that's not compassion, that's cultivating compassion.
Right. When I work towards compassion is the result of
Right, yeah, okay.
a motivation. You're working at steps. So, according to the Lamrim, Tsongkhapa's teachings, traditional Kadampa teachings that go back to the masters of India and back to the Buddha, the first thing we have to do is recognize our own state of suffering. We have to acknowledge the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, and that acknowledgement, that recognition of the suffering that I experience, the suffering of change that I experience, the all-pervasive suffering of conditioning that I am a victim of. I have to really recognize that. We don't recognize that. We don't know that. I mean, if we get bashed a bit, we think, oh gosh, yes, life is suffering. And as we get older, it becomes easier to recognize these things. However, as we go through life, we navigate those bashes, and we enjoy the little thrills, and we are oblivious to that, what the Buddha is really talking about, which is the fact that this situation we're in is suffering. And we're living in a virtual God realm here in New Jersey, the Garden State, the God realm state.
Of course.
We really are.
We really are.
Yes.
Yes.
We really are.
When you have a traffic jam on the DQS.
If that is the worst thing that has happened to you in the last
It's
few
not
weeks,
bad, I
consider
know.
yourself very lucky.
I know.
So that's not compassion. That's just acknowledging our own state of suffering. Now, what we have to do is work towards, and we naturally work towards avoiding our suffering. We have a deep wish to not suffer. Transforming that into some kind of a spiritual endeavor would be to seek our freedom from that suffering. Seeking our freedom from that suffering is already an extraordinary spiritual goal. I mean, in the Lamrim, it's not just the practices that accord with a person of lesser scope, but also medium scope. However, so that's all, but in developing compassion, we actually have to think about the fact that all others are experiencing that same suffering. We have to, and then cultivate an awareness of how dependent we are on others. When we've done that, our hearts will go out to others. That attitude of wishing to remove their suffering as they are suffering just like we are, and we are so dependent on them, that's compassion.
Right. And kind of like understanding that we ourselves are not truly separate from other people, and that our suffering is like theirs, and so whatever. I mean, there's all these traditional methods that we can talk about for hours, right? But like just they're all based on the idea that I am not somehow special and separate from others, that I am like everybody else, and my suffering is like everybody else's suffering. This is an aspect of, like, this is a tiny aspect of what's called wisdom too.
No. So here, it's not even, we're not talking about working at helping others. We're talking about the cultivation of a concern for others.
I understand. I'm saying that the way in which you cultivate it is by recognizing that there's no kind of true distinction between myself and other people.
No. I don't think that we're trying to see ourselves as one with other people.
I'm not saying one. I'm saying that I am not truly separate from them. That what happens to them affects me. That
absolutely,
You're
yes.
dependent to the world. And
I don't live in my own separate little bubble.
No, in developing compassion, we are working at realizing to what extent we are dependent
Right.
on others. Yes.
Right.
And we, having recognized that they are suffering just the way we are, out of that recognition of our dependence on these people who are suffering just the way we are, our hearts open to them.
Right.
That's compassion. Now, yes, what you're saying is that a recognition of that dependence has a
Kind
certain
of.
wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah.
A
But-
little bit tiny.
but-
No big wisdom, I think.
Well,
No, but
compared
when
to
we
the
get
big
here-
thing, it's tiny. But
We got here dependent on others.
No, but we are that we also, with that, work towards cultivating the different generosity
This, the paralelas, yeah.
and ultimately the wisdom that realizes that can take that interdependence and see that it proves that there is nothing inherently existent about any aspect. Yes.
it's got a little bit of that flavor. I mean, it's very far from that whole ninth chapter style of stuff, but it's got a little bit of that same flavor.
It has a wise flavoring. Yes, yes. It is. It is having a wise. Yes. So. So when we so we have, so I'm going to reread this last sentence because I think it contains a great deal. The fact is, the consequences of our actions are often not within our control. Where we do have, so as we engage in applying compassion, as we navigate the world, as it were, and as we try to do good, as we try to actually implement this, the motivation of compassion, often the consequences of our actions are beyond our control. Our actions are under our control, but the consequences we can't always do too much about. Where we do have control is at the level of motivation and in deploying our critical faculties, the wisdom of our discernment. So we have to work on really cultivating the two aspects that we have control over. When we combine these two elements, we can ensure that we are doing our best.
And leave it at that. Don't get worried that I do that. But that's a big problem with a lot of us. We're not sure of our act.
Yes.
There's a lot of neurosis. And then it's good to be around the teacher because they don't have that and they point it out, but, like you're doing now. It's very.
I mean, even our actions are only, I mean, we've all done things and then asked ourselves, why did I just do that?
Yeah, like every 5 minutes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, even
yes.
that is not
Yeah,
really,
yeah, no,
truly
really.
under our control.
No. When you bought your house, you thought all the steps first and then you let it go. You can't say, why did I do this? We're in a house now, I'm not sure it's the right. You did what you could and that's that.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have emotions you don't control
Oh.
about it. So I mean, it's like a lot of things you don't control.
But if your motivation was good and you scoped it out, you used your discernment.
That's-
So though the result of our actions is not knowable and not controllable, our actions and our motivations will have some kind of determination on the future. In other words, within the greater pool of stuff that we are approaching with our motivation and with our discernment, the quality of our motivation and the quality of our discernment will actually contribute in a positive way. And though the result may not turn out the way we expect it to, the way we hope it to, our efforts, our contribution of positivity will contribute positivity.
Cause and effect rules are
Yeah.
applying.
And I think we can have confidence in that.
That's hard to train yourself to do, but it's true. It scopes out on paper if you, that's not the right word.
Yeah, that's,
I mean, that's a little bit of an article of faith, but I think it's fine.
well,
Informed faith, maybe. It's not
Okay,
blind faith.
yeah, I think that we approach it with faith, but I think that what we are being encouraged to do is to feel that faith is valid.
Yeah, I mean, what would you do if not this? Like, what other approach? So let's say we accept the previous statements in the book that like compassion is the appropriate motivation, that wisdom is the appropriate mode of action, or like, I mean, not, he doesn't say it in those words, but I hope I hope I'm coming. So then from that perspective, it's kind of like, even if I'm not sure, like, so I try to act with the best motivation that I can, even if I'm not sure whether that will lead to the best possible outcome, what other thing can I do?
So the part of that to really work on is developing the discernment.
Sure, yes. I mean, to the extent that it's possible, but I mean, other than talking about Buddhahood, which, like, you're deliberately avoiding in this book.
Not deliberate. Well, he
The
brought
point.
in. He said, only the Buddha and God would have the ability to really navigate this complex.
Yeah, but I mean, I think part of His Holiness's intent with this book is to appeal to, like, agnostics, atheists, people for whom those words don't mean anything.
Correct.
You know, if I look at it from their perspective, I mean, I'm here, so I accept the existence of Buddhahood. But if I look at it from the perspective of somebody who doesn't, right, then, you know, an agnostic might say, well, there may not be any way to develop perfect discernment. So no matter how hard I try, I will ultimately never know.
Okay, that's fine.
If they don't believe in Buddha. I see what
Sure.
you're
And that
I mean, I think. Okay, it's a deep question. Let's so I guess the answer would be that you're still working to develop better discernment, even if you can never develop perfect discernment, and you're doing so out of compassion, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, we work towards developing our discernment, refining, making more subtle, yeah, and deepening our compassion too. Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, as Buddhists, we would believe that there is there is a perfection of these things. An agnostic maybe doesn't, but it doesn't actually really matter for the purposes of this.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Here, no. So the fruits of discernment. All the uses of discernment outlined above give us understanding and reflection on that underlying. Sorry, have I missed something?
Reflection on that understanding.
Thank you, Tony.
I'm sitting down, relaxing, having coffee, you're working.
Gives us a deeper and more enduring awareness. When discernment is combined with a compassionate motivation, we have two key components: a comprehensive approach to ethics and a spiritual well-being in a secular context. So when discernment is combined with a compassionate motivation, we have two key components of a comprehensive approach to ethics and spiritual well-being in a secular context. So yes, that's exactly what you have expressed. And these two components, compassion and discernment, are mutually reinforcing. Compassion, by reducing fear and distrust, creates a space in our hearts and minds that is calm and settled. And this space makes it much easier for us to exercise discernment or intelligence. Similarly, the exercise of discernment can strengthen our conviction of the necessity and the benefits of compassion. The two, therefore, complement each other in a profound way.
That's what you were saying. You nicely said it. You really nailed it.
It's arguably the story of His Holiness's life after exile is that he had an unshakable belief that this is true, and he founded every conceivable institute and made every push to prove that this is true, and he was right.
He set up a government, he set up an education system, a welfare system, and this is a guy who was locked into that his whole life.
I mean, I love telling the story about how much my son goes to school, and they do this even without having an explicit curriculum. You know, they talk about kindness and all of this.
It's a good school.
Because it's just I think it's just kind of seeped into people's consciousness from the decades of
those that are listening, yeah, but I guess show up in a New York City school in Brownsville or something. I don't think, but those people are so put upon by everything. Sad. So your son's school more or less reflects this secular ethics.
Yeah, without having any explicit reference to it, any explicit curriculum around it. I think it's just so obviously the right thing to do to the people who teach small children that.
You said they have different exercises where they do certain things.
Yeah, they do things like they have them fill out worksheets that. How am I going to I don't know, be kind this week? They will pick one thing to do. They will get a little star if they do it, and they have monthly affirmations of if you want to have a friend, be a friend was one of this kind of stuff.
New York City to be a black market in those stars.
Well, I mean, there's also kids, of course, that don't behave well at any school.
But that is amazing, that this is a public school that's tax funded and everything. I can't believe it. It's been a problem. Well, I can't believe it. Very good. I know in Canada there's this thing, K through 12 curriculum of secular ethics, which we'll see in the future if maybe they don't want one.
The secular ethics that was applied in Canadian schools was applied 30-something years ago, at the beginning of His Holiness's interest in this, or His Holiness's
1990
sort of suggestion that this be applied in schools. And consequently, they have had 30 years of data to assess, and they have seen that people who are engaged in these types of trainings tend to do better, tend to have less legal problems, there are all sorts of metrics that they've been following and that prove the benefits of these things.
He's saving the world while he's at it. Maybe that school caught wind of that. I mean, no.
I mean, I don't know exactly how it got designed, but they don't reference any of this.
Anything from Emory or from Stanford?
I don't know.
Well, maybe it's in the air. Maybe Bodhisattva's have snuck in.
It's in the air.
It's in the air.
My personal guess is that
It's in the water.
once you see it, it's just so obviously correct that they
Yeah.
do it.
His son's gonna be a real good person because he's getting
Hopefully.
an emotional education and a technical education.
So, ethics in our shared world.
Page 83.
So this has to do with the complexities of the situation in which we are living and our responsibility for so many aspects of that complexity. At my residence in Dharamsala, the hill station in northern India, which has been my home since the early 1960s, it is my daily habit to rise early, normally around 3:30 a.m., and after hours of mental exercises and contemplation, I generally listen to the world news on the radio. Most often I turn into the BBC World Service. It is a routine I have followed for many years as a way of staying in touch with events around the world. As I listen to the constant stream of reports about money and finance, about crisis, conflicts, war, it often strikes me that the complex problems we face in the world, problems of corruption, environment, politics, and so on, almost always indicate a failure of moral ethics and inner values. At every level, we see a lack of self-discipline. Many problems are also due to failure of discernment, of short-sightedness, or narrow-mindedness. So, basically, His Holiness is pointing out the fact that the problems we're having to navigate are man-made.
Yes, and solvable.
Well, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm sure Donald Trump will. Ay, ay, ay.
So, listening to the BBC, when I went off to live in India
You did that too?
39 years ago, there was no internet, there was no access to news, and I had a little shortwave radio, and I think I would listen to it at 7 o'clock in the morning. 6, we'd wake up around 5, and there would be prayers or memorization, and so at 7 o'clock I would listen to it was 7:30. 6:30, 7:30. It was, since India is on a half hour.
Yeah, that's.
I would listen either at 6:30 or at 7:30, and they had that little jingle that, and then they go dung dung
Yeah.
dung
BBC
dung,
World Service.
and you could set your watch to
Well, it's Big Ben. It's the Greenwich
Greenwich
time.
Mean Time. And then the news from around the world.
They cover the world. You know, there's always what's going on in Kenya, something.
So okay, the situation is complex. There are all sorts of things happening. We can't control others. The situation is full of man-made problems, man-made dilemmas, man-made, really thick, heavy, complex problems that have been created by human beings out of their greed, out of their desire for power or whatever, all these things that are afflictions, we'll just call them afflictions. I'm not sure that I don't know to what extent we can actually disentangle this mess. I think that all that we can really work on is disentangling our own messiness.
Internal mess, yes.
Now, His Holiness is really talking about assuming a certain social responsibility and doing so with wisdom. You've opened the heart, but and what I'm proposing is that we are really limited in our ability to help, and the primary work we have to do is on ourselves. I don't know how that falls within what His Holiness is saying here.
Our ego doesn't think that we're limited, though. We think we could solve the problems we take on these things we know nothing about and blab about them, but we never get anywhere. So it is
There are situations
work on
in which you
ourselves.
can solve a problem in front of you, where there's like a problem in
Yeah.
front of you and you know the solution to it, and then you should probably do that.
Right. Making
But those
espresso.
situations are rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the way people decided that he should do this, he should pick that person. They like they're playing chess with the world. They don't have the goods to do that. They don't have the.
But
the
they're
ego
also-
thinks it could do it.
There, I think that we Americans have a tendency to step into situations with the belief that we know best.
Amen.
And I don't mean this to be political, but it's
Oh yeah.
I think that from us, in terms of spiritual practice, we are acknowledging that we don't know, and that we have to work at developing a little more wisdom, a little more discernment, a little more that other wing, and work at developing, deepening the compassionate wing as well, rather than going out into the world and trying to go out into the world and try to solve the problems before we really have the tools to do so. We really make a mess of things, and these
Iraq.
man-made problems that His Holiness is referring to.
Yeah.
Every player within the creation of those man-made problems believes that he or she is doing the best thing for their particular group or their particular.
Yes.
What I meant is situations like if you know how to cure some particular kind of cancer, then
Yeah,
you should
yeah,
do it.
of
I mean,
course.
that's pretty much unambiguously a good thing.
Making a translation machine.
You have the no-vaxxers who say, the problems that you are
But
creating.
those are there's the problem of curing cancer, and there's the problem of people's beliefs about the cure, and those are two separate
Yeah.
problems.
I don't know that
Oh,
they're
Mr.
separate.
I mean, I'm gonna stick with curing cancer is an unambiguous good.
Yes.
I think we can agree on that. But those kinds of unambiguous goods are rare.
Feeding the hungry. That's a good one.
Oh, I would be in the monastery and I would hear the water tank on the roof overflow.
Really?
And I would see that no one heard it. And I would find myself saying, the tank.
You're welcome.
And there were those who were so deeply involved in their studies, so concentrated that
The sense stated it wasn't coming in. They were very good.
I don't know. I felt,
That's like somebody.
come on, you have to,
The water tank would overflow and flood everybody.
not flood it, but make the noise of overflowing. The
Oh.
water was so precious, is so
That's
precious
right,
there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I believe that the best thing was to run and turn the water off to make sure that we.
It's unambiguous, that's a good one.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But
but you can see how here it's not really clear what's better, to interrupt somebody's studies to do that, or that the water will not run, right? Like, I can see the ambiguity. I mean, in the extreme example of curing cancer, the benefit is so large to so many people.
It's so black and white.
I mean, if you're about to attain Buddhahood, then maybe you should do that over curing cancer. But like, say, people like me, right? It would be a much, much more unambiguous situation.
no, but I'm proposing that we should be that a certain humility in our effectiveness.
I don't disagree with that. Yes. I agree.
So,
3 minutes.
of course, the causes and conditions of particular problems can be immensely complex. The seeds of ethnic violence, rebellion, and war, for example, almost invariably date back decades or even centuries. But still, if we are really interested in tackling our problems at their roots, whether we're talking about human conflict, poverty, or environmental destruction, we have to recognize that they are ultimately related to issues of ethics. Our shared problems do not fall from the sky, nor are they created by some higher force. For the most part, they are products of human action and human error. If human action can create these problems in the first place, then surely we humans must have the capacity as well as the responsibility to find their solutions. The only way we can put them right is by changing our outlook and our way, and by taking action. So maybe we'll stop there. We'll leave that as something to think about. Thank you.
Maybe one way of putting what I'm trying to say is engineering problems are much easier to solve than people problems.
So, today is the 31st.
Yes, tomorrow, pay your taxes, like we just did.
So, okay, there's someone who's, if we are not truly separate, then we must be truly one. How? No. It doesn't follow that if we're not truly separate, we are truly one. If we are not truly separate, we can be mutually dependent. And the word truly for truly one is a tricky one. How does the suffering of a crab in the ocean 1,000 miles away affect me? Seems like unrelated karma. Karma can't be transferred, can it?
No.
So let's take these things one part of it at a time. If we are not truly separate, so
Truly separate means inherently separate.
well, I don't know to what degree the word truly is being applied here.
Personifies.
If we are not truly separate, then we can be mutually dependent.
We can be mutually dependent.
And so I would say that saying we must be truly one is a statement I can't quite. I think we should think of the opposite of not truly separate is to be mutually dependent. Not truly one, but mutually dependent. We are all individuals dependent on each other. We are dependent on the different elements within nature, so that dependence is what exists. how does the suffering of a crab in the ocean 1,000 miles away affect me? Well, if I work towards considering the challenges of each and every sentient being, then even if I can't actually identify that crab 1,000 miles away, I can imagine that there are crabs 1,000 miles away who are struggling to survive, and my attitude of compassion, my wish to remove their suffering, will extend even to the crab that's out there 1,000 miles away.
You infer or you deduce whatever.
So the last parts of this I don't quite, seems like unrelated karma. No, we are related karmically.
We're in the same planet,
We're all
which we all created.
interrelated, and no karma cannot be transferred. According to the laws of karma, you will not suffer anything that you have not caused by your past actions. And you can't assume the karmic repercussions of someone else's actions.
Even if they're your parent or
You can contribute to them because of your parents have provided you with so much that your prayers, your wishes, your whatever can have an effect on them.
But these primitive religions, they have a vendetta against a certain family because 3 generations ago this one did that, and so let's go get this guy now. A lot of the world runs on that still.
So,
The fact that there exists a crab 1,000 miles away that is suffering already brings you a little bit of suffering just saying that sentence, right? I mean, we can try to bury it, but there's always some like empathy towards the crab 1,000 miles away.
1,500
So,
no,
I mean, so just the idea that such a crab might exist already causes you a little bit of suffering.
so let us pray for all the crabs
who are suffering.
as we recite the Sutra, the recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. We can dedicate the merit from this recitation to the removal of the suffering of all crabs.
What about lobster? Yeah, no.
And
You know, all these
lobsters.
people selected to die in a restaurant. Hey, no way.
And yes, and the people who are causing the suffering of those animals.
In other words.
I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavat, Tathagata, Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans, is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of Nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavad is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. Now let us recite the prayer for a swift return of Dr. Kyung Rinpoche. Exalted wisdom of all victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of one wearing saffron robes, Guru Lobsang Tuwang Doje Chan. Please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch of doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast ways of aspirational prayers, Lord of speech of the victor Losang's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Though holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening, yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you till cyclic existence end to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Dharmakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta drawn by 7 steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings and wish-fulfilling jewel. Return as the glory of Losang Tempe. Magnificent truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Karmayama, and Srimati Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors, may you spontaneously fulfill our wish, the swift blossoming of the reincarnation's fresh moonlight face.
Would you shake him? Thanks, Nikki.
Night, and we will meet again on Tuesday, next Tuesday, at the University Settlement House in Manhattan at, what is it?
163, what is it, Darren? 176 Bowery?
It's in the building that's on the southeast corner of Houston, and the Bowery
Right.
in New York City.
Use the Whole
Thank you.
Foods place as your landlord.
273 Bowery.
273 Bowery.
273 Bowery, just south of Houston Street on the east side of the Bowery.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, Tuesday.
Thank you, Nikki. Very good. Very family style again. Very good. Easy to learn.